Good evening, everyone. Thanks to Columbia for inviting me here today. It's an opportunity to be reflective, actually, about what has happened here in New York City over the last several years. So, looking forward to this discussion. My name is Maria Torres Springer. I'm the president of the New York City Economic Development Corporation. For those who aren't too familiar with EDC, we are a quasi-governmental entity. I'm appointed by the mayor. We have our own board of directors. And our mandate is to promote and help shape the growth of New York City's economy. And for most of our history, what that has meant has essentially been real estate development, area-wide planning. We administer a number of incentive programs and the like. Pretty typical, I'd say, for an economic development entity in most cities. So I've been in this role for almost 6 months. I am coming back to EDC. I spent 7 years in the Bloomberg administration, 3 years at City Hall, and 4 years at EDC, starting about 2007 and 2008. And I spent some time literally in the wilderness working as Chief Operating Officer at Friends of the High Line. But for the most part, it's been a pure economic development set of experiences. I mentioned the timeline coming, my first stint at EDC, because it's relevant, I think, to at least my perspective and the organization's contemporary history and involvement in the growth of the tech ecosystem in New York. And so the former administration, and we're certainly continuing a lot of this work, acutely aware that we needed to do everything that we could to diversify the city's economy. As many of you know, we all weathered the storm of the last Great Recession. And a lot of this work really started after the collapse of Lehman Brothers. And there's a gentleman here today whose first day at the job was the day after that collapse. And it was like, whatever it is that we hired you for, actually, your job is different. And it's to help ensure we are diversifying the city's economy and really taking the types of strategic steps to see a quantum leap, a quantum change in order to achieve that. And so we started in what has become about 100 different initiatives in entrepreneurship. They run the gamut from initiatives that dealt with access to capital, to real estate, to training and networking. And really at the time, because this was a new book of business for the organization, it was really an exercise in a few things. One, making sure that we were listening very closely to our partners, the private sector, the academic sector, everyone who is part of the amazing tech ecosystem in New York, and really developing programs, because I'm not surprised to many of you here, government can be pretty slow at doing things and not always responsive. And so we needed to make sure that we were actually addressing contemporary issues and challenges that tech startups or the business community in general was viewing. So that was one general principle. And the second, of course, was to make sure that government was playing the right role. And so we have viewed our role over the course of the last several years as a number of things. Convener, a catalyst for a number of programs that Oren mentioned earlier, cheerleader, but there are, and then roles that we don't play. And so government is pretty bad at picking winners, for instance. So with the funds, whether it was in life sciences or the angel fund for tech startups, we made sure that while we invested, we weren't actually administering that fund. So those are some of the main principles, which really culminated then in addition to running all of those programs, we also, in parallel, launched what eventually became the Applied Sciences Initiative. And I mention that because while each of the programs I mentioned before were tactical, they were addressing very specific needs that the tech ecosystem, tech startups had communicated to us, the Applied Sciences Initiative was launched in order to make sure that in the long term, we were really thinking about what every technology company in New York City was telling us. A real need for engineering talent, not just today, not just tomorrow, but in the years to come. And so that partnership, of course, Columbia is one of the major partners, had the fortune of attending the ribbon cutting for the new Institute for Data Sciences a few weeks ago. But Cornell Technion is also building a campus in Roosevelt Island, NYU, and a number of others. And what we believe, and we're actually outpacing it based on the progress of these partnerships, is that we will at least double the number of engineers in the city through those 5 partnerships in less than a generation. So that tells part of, hopefully, of the story. And I think as we look into the future, the one thing that I'll say is um, what it really built on is the story of New York City itself, a city that in the last couple of centuries has this ability to reinvent itself. And so it may have meant this for tech in the last several years, but our transition as an economy from a port and trade city to an industrial city to now a thriving knowledge tech city, that is it's the story not just of the ecosystem, but it's the story of New York City itself. And that to me is what I think is an opportunity for all of us as we continue to build our companies and work on these issues. We make sure we harness.